be in the zone.
Welcome to the Hawks on the wing this Monday after the great win over Gold Coast. I'm here with the Doctor. I'm C. Doctor, what do you reckon?
Well, I'm very relieved. I thought because if you go back to our preview, oh God forbid, I suggested they would lose by 10 points, but we actually won. And what was interesting about the game is the sort of the bursts of, brilliant football by the Hawks and then sort of ordinary football. However, it's not like it used to be where it was a kind of a quarter at a time where we play well and then come out the next quarter and play horribly. It seems to be these bursts are sort of shorter in intensity at either end. But the fact that we had those two really good bursts where we kicked 5 or 7 goals in a row, I think it was, and then another 5, really won us the game.
Yeah, I 100% agree. It felt like we would just put a big gap between us and them, and then in about 10 minutes, it was at the end of the first quarter, I think it was the end of the second quarter, well, maybe somewhere in the second quarter, third quarter. Every quarter almost had these bursts of Hawthorn play, and then suddenly, from then on, we would just almost just hold it, or I'm not sure exactly what would happen. And then it would they would slowly chip back at that lead, and then we'd just blast them out again. It was really, it was really a game won in the midfield, wasn't it?
Oh, for sure. I mean, especially on paper, the Suns have a terrific midfield, but they didn't connect. But we did. And then having Day in particular, who is just sensational, even without Nash being in there. And then I think Ward had his best game for a long time. I thought he was really great, and McKenzie pretty well backed him up. And of course, Newcomb was sensational the whole game. So that was where it was won.
I mean, we'll go through it line by line. Let's start at the back line. My thoughts were, it was an okay performance. I didn't think the back line. Normally, I say our back line is our strongest, but it let through 97 points. Now that's a big score to let through, especially when you have a team like Gold Coast who wasn't winning the centre clearances. So for me, the back line actually, I would say, slightly underperformed, especially Sicily, who I thought was genuinely beaten by his opponent. I think Long was his opponent, from what I remember, who kicked 4 goals and could have kicked more. I mean, he was probably the most dominant tall forward on the ground by a mile. So that was my thoughts. What's your thoughts on the back line?
I agree. I thought that Barras played pretty well. He got beaten a couple of times, but he held their full forward who can really turn it on. I think he kicked 1 or 2 goals. But I agree. I thought there was something amiss, but partly it may have been to do with the injuries that occurred to both Amon and Impey. I mean, Impey was out of the game after the first quarter, so maybe that unsettled them. Weddle, I thought, played very well. We can talk about Weddle later, but I thought he played well, and I agree with you. I think Sis had kind of, a bit of an off day.
I thought he was Sis's worst day in that I can remember. I mean, it's even if Sicily is a bit angry or loses his control a bit emotionally and maybe gives away a 50. Normally in those games, he still is a very effective player. He'll beat his opponent. But I just came from watching the first quarter on the replay. Even I thought the way he was using the ball wasn't up to his standard. It was mostly just bomb kicks down the line, not using that powerful kick of his. Because if you look at Sicily's strength, it's twofold. It's the intercept marks, and it's the beautiful kicking, which unlocks a play that nobody saw except of him. And I thought both of those were down. You
Yes.
didn't really see many intercepts, and also you didn't really see him using the ball,
Yeah.
effectively. So, but I'm sure he'll bounce back next week. He's a great player, but just
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
unusual to see
And
him do that poorly.
what did you think of Weddle?
I mean, I think Weddle. What I love about Weddle, I've noticed that Weddle, you can see his confidence gone up in this way. I noticed he was instigating high fives with the other players.
Yeah.
Like it was like he was bringing a positivity. Like sometimes they would get beaten or go out, but he would be the one there, patting the other player on the back. That's what I noticed. Is that only comes when a player, I think, is playing with some confidence. They're thinking of others and how to try and get positively into others as well. Not so
Yeah.
focused on their own game. And I think that's
Yeah.
reflected also in way, he's playing. I just feel like he's playing with more confidence to take it on. He did a few of those Weddle runs that down the wing, and I think he was great. And it's a shame he didn't kick that goal on the run at the end, but he played a good game overall.
Yeah, I thought so. I think he's feeling comfortable now in that position and really relishes it and is kind of pleased that he doesn't have to play on the wing where he felt terribly uncomfortable. No, I think he was terrific.
It's good they've
So
learnt. It's good they've learnt as well not to put him on the wing. This was an
yeah,
opportunity to throw him back on the
exactly.
wing, but they didn't. And I think Nan coming into the team
No,
has also taken a bit of the requirement for Weddle to go on the wing off, because I think Nan is looking quite good for a young player playing that position. He seems to get into space, which is really what you want from your winger, and is able to. There was one run he
he's
did down the line.
terrific.
He's good for a first year or 4 games in.
Well, 18 years old. I mean, he's incredibly young, and he looks much older than that in the way he thinks about himself and the game. I think I'm really impressed by him. I'm thinking him as a longer term person, really. Like, what's he going to be like in, say, 2 or 3 years? He's going to be terrific. I really liked him. But Bailey McDonald to me was a little bit in and out, and I'm not convinced by him in that back line, but he did his job. But I don't know. I'm not 100% convinced.
Yeah, I think he's probably the most likely to fall out of the team again. He just doesn't
Yeah,
seem quite. I mean, he's got the attributes, but I just didn't see much. He doesn't seem to be able to use his pace yet as much as you'd probably want. Like he's got that
yeah,
pace, but that burst of speed, but you don't really see it coming to the fore as much. So,
yeah,
yeah, I think maybe he still needs a bit more time to develop. I'd say, especially when
yeah,
you've got a few, other players like a Butler, like a Perez, and all this type Dalton, and all these other players who can probably come in for a go as well, sort of floating around that similar level in the team.
yeah.
I don't think he did anything to keep his spot, if that makes like demand his spot. Let's say so. So how about the midfield? So what's your? I mean, well, they obviously played really
No.
well, but what's your anything you want to point out?
Well, I think it's just the day factor has been enormous, and he's such an incredibly good player. You realise what we've been missing. I think the centre has just absolutely been influenced by the day coming in. I mean, he's a brilliant player. He can cut through packs. He can when he's able to get forward of the centre, he takes it on and he runs into the forward line. I mean, he's capable, therefore, of kicking goals or finding someone who's in a better position. And I think that's lifted the whole group. Puwon Boy feels much more comfortable, and he was brilliant too. By the way, he was consistently brilliant. But the other person I liked then was Ward, I thought that was his best game. And then Mackenzie, who, is there. He was doing some good stuff. He was tackling, which was what I really liked of his play. So no, I thought they were really great, and in fact, it was shown on the stats at one stage. They were just miles ahead in taking it out of the centre.
I mean, you wonder how much it's on Gold Coast, but it's because it seems like every midfield that comes up against them absolutely puts them to the sword. And you look at it, I mean, it's quite incredible how what's happened to their mids. I mean, I don't want to talk about their mids length, but you wonder if we're being enabled, because that was probably the best performance I've seen of our entire midfield. Like, they just looked in control. Really, other than
Yeah.
the start of the game where I thought Gold Coast was on top for the first maybe 10 or 15 minutes. After that,
Yes, they were.
we were just cleaner and stronger and cutting through. I thought Mackenzie as well was doing his role, exactly what you'd want
Yeah.
from him. I thought his ball use was quite good. I just thought, yeah, overall that, and the thing is that, well, just to go back for the backline moment, we lost Impey. Impey,
Yeah,
arguably
that
top
wasn't.
3 player in the team. So,
Yeah.
we're losing his run and his coming through the midfield and stuff like that. So that should be a big loss, and that seemed to, you almost didn't even notice it. Like, it was just,
No,
we just
exactly.
completely were functional without him. So that was great to see as well.
Well, I think it was about 5 goals for or so that Hawthorn got as a result of the centre play.
Yeah, huge.
So they didn't really rely so much on the run from the back to get a goal. They were getting it forward.
The only thing as well, I'd just say on the slight knock on the midfield is that I thought a few times, um, when we're coming out of the front of stoppage, we tended to, rather than lower the eyes, we tended to not kick it necessarily to the advantage of our forwards. I mean, this is sort
Yeah,
of a good segue
yeah.
into the forward line, which I think what we weren't hitting many leading targets, throughout the day.
No.
It was mostly we'd come straight, and there's one that sticks in my mind with Newcomb, who ran straight through the stoppage, and I mean, I think we got a goal out of it. I think it was one of McDonald's goals, but he just bombed it to 30 metres out when he probably could have lowered the eyes and hit like a target who was available or leading out, which is probably a more a percentage kick. I mean, I'd have to look at
Yeah,
it. But it was just, I mean, maybe in that situation it was fine, but it's just that feeling where they're not quite using that last disposal when they've done all the work to get that space in the midfield, and they're just we're missing the target or something like that. And then if we could just tighten that up, then those that's when we could have just really put them away. I think
yeah.
that's the only knock I could say.
Yeah, well, the Talls didn't have a great day, did they?
Yeah.
I mean, Mitchell Lewis and Chol, and, well, we don't include him as a tall, but Hardwick. Hardwick got his 2 goals early, but I agree that wasn't working, but they were at least knocking it down to ground to allow, the smaller guys to come in and do something, particularly Watson, who was
And
once
more was also
again.
great. More was,
And more, yeah. Well, this we'll talk about more, but just focusing for a
yeah,
minute
yeah.
on Watson. I mean, unbelievable.
Mm.
He's just outstanding. I mean, the superlatives are. Oh, you can't think of anything more to say about him, because what he did and what he does and how he creates it, and not only that, not only to create the space on these players, but to kick goals, from impossible, what you think is impossible angles. I mean, he's just brilliant.
Mm.
Seriously, I haven't seen anyone to that standard. And he's so assured, he's so confident about what he's doing, and you just know that he wants to be the best player in that position.
I know we compare him to Cyril every time, but you just see the similarities, even in his rundown tackling. You know,
Yes, exactly.
I don't think I'd ever see another player like Cyril who can do those rundown tackles consistently on players. But I think
Yeah,
Watson probably did two, and one of them he probably should have got right at the end when it happened to bounce off the guy's foot when he got tackled, and then apparently that's a kick. So, I mean, he
yes,
did
that's
3
right.
rundown tackles in the game, which really should have been free
Yeah,
holding the ball. That's a rundown tackle is such a damaging thing to do to the opposition, because basically it's a complete turnaround of the play. So it's a really strong thing to do, a rundown tackle, and he just seems to just do them every week now. So he's got that same defensive side as a Cyril Rioli had, and the same
yeah.
offensive side, and he's got that, and he's starting to build that same aura around him. Like the other,
Phew.
that the crowd is starting to gets involved when they see him coming. I mean, you can hardly hear a crowd at the Gold Coast Stadium, of course, but that feeling of the crowd going with him, like something's going to happen here, and that's just, you can't buy that kind of I mean, just not you can't buy that kind of power on the field, but also it's just so much fun as a spectator to have that kind of
Yeah.
player on your side.
And the amazing thing about him is his speed, his running speed, like that incident, that moment where, you on the television, you didn't even see him, and four guys are running to the ball, and he goes past them all,
Yeah.
picks up the ball and slots it.
Mm.
I mean, they're running hard. And
The
he goes
cameraman was surprised by it. The cameraman didn't even know he was doing it. Cameraman's looking at it, he can't even see it. I mean,
That's right. Oh, that was hilarious. And the other one we should focus on is Moore. Now that's interesting because in the preview we were saying Moore has to be the other person, in that pocket, and he's going to be kicking goals, and he's going to do everything possible, and he did. And that was just fantastic.
I mean, Moore is a great example of exactly. This is the adjustment the team needed to make, and obviously they have made it. Because as we talked about in that preview, the midfield now is good. Don't worry.
Yes.
Don't need to compensate. We don't need the half forwards to compensate for our midfield. They don't need to be getting it on at half back. They don't need to be getting in the wing. They need to be kicking goals. You can rely on Mackenzie Ward and Day and Newcomb to get that ball into that forward line. But you need players in there that are going to convert those opportunities into goals. And that's why this side, you look at Moore's stats and you go 13 possessions, but 4 goals. I'd much rather him get 13 and 4 than 26 and 1. I mean, that we need the goals, That's where the scoring, and that's why the score is reflected. As we said, even the back line didn't do too well. 96 points is not that great to let through. But we kicked 116, because we got that scoring power came back, and we were able to win the game off our scoring power. That's what we. And if you go back to 2024, that great run, that's where we were winning games. It was the scoring power. We had a weaker backline then than we do now. But the scoring power alone would just meet you beat teams. So that's what.
Yes.
So if we can get those two pillars, the scoring power and now the stronger backline, we're in a really good position.
Yes, and the centre as well.
And the
I mean,
centre.
we're in. Yeah, we all lines are doing strong, and then it gives confidence. If the back line is strong, it gives confidence to the forward line that, in a way, to take it further. To take it in, or the centre to take it in if they are happy about the back line. But no, I think that was functioning well. The only missing element in the forward line was a Gunston, and Hardwick tried to do that, but of course it would have been much more effective had someone like him be there. But I don't think I'm still very pessimistic about him coming into the team in the near future. What about you?
Yeah, I'm not sure. But what was gratifying is that we could still kick a score without him.
Yes, exactly.
And we kicked a score as well, coming in as well to the talls. The talls, I thought, they were probably were well beaten by their backs, but it was also the entries into the forward line kicking to them. There was a lot of times where the ball was like kicked to Lewis's feet or over his head, or it was not used when he was available. Like all these small things like that, and if we just tighten that aspect up, and we're hitting those leading, hitting those leading targets with our ball use. We're lowering the eyes and hitting them, rather than, because we felt like we were just bombing it to their talls, and they were just out marking. They've got that.
Well, particularly Mac, he was just taking it all the time. I don't know how many intercepts he did, 9 or so, I think. But he was fantastic.
But they're making it easy for him. They're just bombing it onto his head.
Sure.
I mean, he's always going to outmark. He's always going to outmark.
No, he was good. No, I agree. But look, that may come together, but it didn't matter in this game because, as you said, you've got those small forwards who are doing the damage.
Connor McDonald, the same, kicking his 2 goals were important, and an important stage as well.
Yeah,
and Guinea
too. Yeah. So they all contributed. So it was 4 + 2 + 1 + Watson. So the smalls, I think they kicked over 10 goals between them, which was really great. That was really necessary. So
and of course, Day kicking 1 and Newcomb kicking 2 is also what we wanted to see. I would have loved Ward to kick his one on the run as well. I mean,
Yeah, that was unfortunate, wasn't it? I mean, he did a fantastic break and then missed, but that would have been wonderful. Would have given him a lot of confidence too to kick goals in the future, But
yeah.
no, overall, and I thought going back to the wings, which we haven't mentioned, I thought D'Ambrosio did pretty well. He was sort of injured at one stage there and
Mhm.
had to hobble off, but he came back on. I thought he held his own. On the other side, we had Morrison. Well, you know what you get with Morrison. He's dependable. He did a couple of quite good things with flicking the ball, kicking the ball over someone's
Mm.
head to a good position to get a goal.
I thought Morrison
So
was good.
he's not bad.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I,
he's pretty good.
I
He was pretty good.
I think it's exactly what we said in the pre-game as well with Morrison is that he's got this capability to be a good player.
Yes.
He'll never be your star player, but he needed to get back to that form where he was. He's a good enough player. Like he doesn't lose his contests. He does what he needs to do. He doesn't need to do anything he's not a Will Day. He's not going to break a pack and like run through and kick
No,
a goal from
exactly.
40 or something like that. But he can halve his contests and he can do exactly what he needs to do. And I thought he did his role
Yeah,
exactly as
I
we
agree.
need him to do. I
Yeah,
wouldn't say that I think he didn't do anything to lose his spot, Morrison. I think he maintained his spot. I mean,
yeah,
the Morrison, that's the Morrison we had at the end of last year before he got his injury.
yeah,
If we go back
yeah,
to that, everyone's quick to bag on Morrison, but he was a good player for most of that season until he got injured, and
yeah,
then he sort of lost form, which happens. But I think he
yeah,
I
I
think
agree.
he's a fine player, and he can, as long as he does that role and like puts in,
Yeah.
he's definitely got he can definitely have a spot in this team, and his confidence will only grow, I think, as well now that he's had that game.
Now, what have you made no mention of your favourites, the Rucks?
The
What's
Rucks.
it's hard, isn't it, to make a judgment about this because they ended up 15 possessions between them, which was less than probably one good player.
Mm,
But you wonder, I'm still unsure about, it and having the two of them and their contribution. But I'm supposing that what Reeves does in the centre is a help to the centre players. I mean,
mm,
that you've got to kind of give credit there, but around the ground, oh God, it's sort of a worry, isn't it? When you see other players like I think Gorn in the loss that they had against who it was, um, he had the most possessions.
Adelaide, they lost to Adelaide. They lost to.
Adelaide,
Yeah.
he he ends up with the most possessions of the team of their team. So you're comparing their contribution often to other rucks, but they're not going to be that, are they? And maybe it's just we're going to always have this this pairing that is not to the level of one good ruckman. It's
Mm,
it's going to be less, and maybe that's you can't do anything much about it. I just don't understand it. I mean, we've said it before. My preference is that they have someone who backs up Chol in the forward line. So one of the young guys like Deer or others who are in that VFL team come in to back up Chol, and then Chol is the second ruck. That's what I favour, but they're not going to do it because we won, and we're winning at times with this combination. So I don't know.
yeah. I mean, I think it's just an issue of. I mean, it's all everything. There's always it comes down, I think, probably to Deer's form probably is impacting our rucks in some ways. Like I think
Yes.
if Deer was able to capture his form that he had in 2024, then it would probably translate into the rucks for us. Like because
Yeah.
we would
True.
want to play Deer as well, which therefore we can't play another tall. And who's the next tall to go? Probably it's one of the rucks. You know what I mean? Like it's not
Yeah.
you're not going
True.
to drop
Yeah.
any of the others. So
Yeah.
it's sort of. I think there's sort of a transference from Deer's whatever's happened to his
Mm.
confidence or whatever. I mean, the scary thing about the rucks is that you look at the top two teams, Freo and Sydney, and they both have exceptional ruckmen. Like,
Yeah,
and
they
a lot,
do.
like, except they probably would have the top two ruckmen. So the issue is when we're coming up against the very best, and even Melbourne to an extent, who their ruck was, Gorm was on top of us as well in that game. When we come up against the very best, how will these rucks perform?
Yeah.
That's the bigger issue, because this game, I mean, Gold Coast rucks aren't spectacular. I mean, maybe
No.
not that
They,
I know of. They're okay,
no.
but they're not the great best rucks in the league. So
No.
and they're not, and I wouldn't say that they were dominant in this game. So what happens when they come up
No.
against Grundy?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
that's the greater worry for the way that the
Yes.
rucks is now, because it's how you match up against the very best, not so much how you match up against Gold Coast.
Yeah.
And when you got Grundy in there, I was looking at Grundy's stats just before. I think he's in the top 20 clearances of any player in the AFL.
Right. Yeah.
So he's a
He
clearance player.
yeah.
He's
Well, it's
creating
like,
clearances for the team. That's a big advantage compared to.
that's Gorn, and that's also Jackson at
Yeah,
Fremantle.
they
But
clear the ball.
all clearances, they just grab the ball and go.
Hmm.
Whereas I saw Meek do it once. He did it,
Yeah.
I think, in the game, which is good. But they do it consistently. Yeah, I worry about that. But look, there's still time to sort of make those adjustments in the team. So we just have to see, when we go up against against GW, the uh,
Sydney.
Western Sydney,
Oh,
who we go
GWS.
up
Oh,
against.
GWS. Yeah.
Yeah, GWS. Next week, it will be a bit of a test for us, particularly if we've got those injuries. Amon, MP, and Weddle being out for 3. It's going to impact. Those they are big losses, really. I mean, it's hard to know what the MP's problem is. They thought it might be a hamstring, but maybe we can leave that more for our preview game.
Mm,
But still, the Weddle issue is an issue. If he's out for 3, we've got a few teams they're not the top teams, but they're still challenging ones.
mm.
Like GWS, Carlton, and one other I forget. But they're in that league. It might be, in fact, Melbourne. So they're not easy. They're not going to be easy. But without Weddle, particularly in the last 2 or 3 weeks, he's been excellent, and he is going to be missed.
It's a shame, isn't it? Because he has come into some form. But on the positive side, you can say it gives him a rest, so he's going to be very fresh
Yeah,
for the
true.
rest of the season. Like,
Yeah, true.
to take
Yeah, well,
the
that's it.
silver lining of the dark
Yeah,
cloud. And I
yeah,
think,
yeah,
and again with that position, I think that position there are a few players that float around like a Perez or whatever who can come in and play a
yeah.
similar-ish role to. I mean, not at the level probably of Weddle. You don't get that run, but
No,
the hard part is losing the Weddle and the Impey at the same time, because both of them are probably you're off the running the ball out of the backline
yes,
players, and Amon's obviously carrying some kind of knee injury, so he's lost his run and all season. You can
yeah,
comment about that with Amon.
yeah,
So you've sort of lost a lot of that rebound power. Um, so that's going to be a bit of a selection. It's going to be interesting to see who they select. I'm expecting that Perez probably will be the come in, and then
yeah.
I'm actually somewhat confident about Impey because they did bring him back on the ground,
They did.
and so obviously
Yeah,
they didn't immediately go, he's out. You wouldn't risk Impey if you thought there was any real damage. I
yeah,
would think, because he's one of your best players. He's
yeah.
one of your best
Exactly.
players. So if he'd
Yeah,
done a hammy at 30 or of any any big one, you wouldn't put him back on.
no,
So
no,
and he didn't have any ice on it at the end of the game that I could see either. So I'm
no.
quietly confident. Hopefully, he would only be out. He wouldn't. If he is out, it'd only be a week or
Yeah,
something like that, because it didn't look that serious. It's hard to know, of course, but
yeah,
so yeah. Well, we can talk about that more in the Thursday selection squawk, I think. But
yep.
but yes. Any final words before we wrap it up?
No, no. Excuse me. That was a very important game to win. And we did. It was important for lots of reasons, and particularly for maintaining our position on the ladder. and also the confidence in going into the second half of the year. That was a really important game to win. So I'm very pleased that it ended up that way. So no, I was happy. I was nervous throughout the whole game. It didn't look easy. But Hawthorn games never look easy, I'm afraid, and so I'm used to it. But I sort of had a confidence once the fourth quarter occurred and they kicked those goals at the beginning. Then I relaxed, but during the game I didn't feel. I felt like the Suns might get their mojo together. They're a funny team, really. They don't act as a team. They're very individual. I think that's part of their problem, and they play for stats, individual stats. I mean, some of them had 35 possessions. They had way more possessions than us as a group, but they don't seem to play as a team, and it showed.
Well, you wonder if that's part of the reason why a lot of their players seem to want to leave, to come to Hawthorn.
Well, maybe
Is that
right.
part of the reason? It's hard to know from the outside looking in, but that could be what is happening, because it's amazing to look at the stat sheet and see how many stats they got, and yet they didn't win in the midfield. And how can you have a player with 40 plus possessions and you have lost the midfield by so much? And it's sort of you scratch your head looking at that, don't you?
Yeah, you do. Anyway, I'm happy.
Yeah. So we'll wrap it up. Thank you to everyone, all the listeners. We appreciate you, and make sure that you leave a comment or on what you think. What's your opinion? Have we missed the mark? What have we hit the nail on the head on? Put it in the comments, and we'll see you on Thursday for the selections for Go Hawks.
I just wanna be